Hey, shalom, Israel. We live. All right, shalom, Israel. You live for the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge. Priest and Captain Soccer War holding down the class here in Memphis, Tennessee. We have classes here in Memphis every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Teach so-called blacks, Latinos, Native American Indians the truth according to the Bible. What is the truth? The truth is that so-called blacks, Latinos, and Native Americans descend from the greatest people that have ever walked the face of the earth. The Bible identifies us as the lost 12 tribes of Israel. And in the year 2020, with all the things that are going on, in this world, in this society, it's definitely important for God's people to wake up to the knowledge of who they are, where they come from, and what their purpose is on this earth. And so what we do in these classes is go into the Bible, not only read the Bible, but allow brothers and sisters to be able to understand how this knowledge, wisdom, and understanding applies to their lives today. See, in religion, because of religion, a lot of us have learned, we've been taught a lot of things that just aren't true concerning God, concerning the Bible, concerning our lives. And so it is the aim of the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge to restore our people to not only knowing God, but knowing ourselves and understanding the nature of the battle that we are involved in when it comes to delivering our souls and serving the Most High and being the children that He called us to be. All right, and it's a Friday night. Normally we don't have classes in Memphis on Fridays, but we're in the midst of the Feast of Hachaanakah, which is popularly known as Hanukkah. You understand? And what I said was for the space of the 8 days of the Feast of Hachaanakah, every night I would go live for a little while just to, break down different aspects of this feast so that brothers and sisters can gain some understanding on why it is important for us to not only know the truth concerning these high holy days that we find in the Bible, but also in the ways that we can draw inspiration from the experiences of our brothers and sisters from the past in order to give us strength, the fortitude and the integrity to be able to withhold and stand strong in the truth in the times that we're living in. When you go into the Bible and you read the Bible, every book in the Bible, was written about a brother or a sister who endured hardship in their lifetime. And what made it so that these brothers and sisters' stories would be recorded and written down and preserved for us to have here today is because in their lifetime, they were called to do something that was amazing. They were called to do something that went against the power of, the rulers of their time. You understand? You go to the book of Jeremiah, chapter 28, verse 38. The Bible tells you about the nature of a man of God. And the nature of men of God is not at all what we have been taught to believe men of God are like in this time that we're living in. When you read the Bible and you understand the truth about Jesus Christ, or Yahushua Mashiach, who the world calls Jesus Christ, when you read in this Bible and you understand the truth about men like Moses, you understand men like Daniel and Ezekiel, you understand why they were hated. You understand why they were persecuted. It wasn't because they were speaking nice, smooth words. It wasn't because they had a message of God's love for everybody. It's because the truth about God and the truth about what He demands from us is not something that makes a lot of people comfortable. It's not a message of salvation and joining hands in hands for everyone across the earth. You understand? The words of men of God are usually warnings from God. It's God speaking about His displeasure with something or with a way that people are living on the earth. And there's a reason why men of God have always been hated and ostracized in the lifetimes that they live. And it's a reason why those of us today who the Lord has chosen to be men of God, and sisters who he's chosen to come into the truth and change their lives are often hated, and ostracized by society. You understand? But the Bible is written of men and women who, when they were called in their lifetime, they forsook everything and stood for the Most High. You understand? And for many of us, we've been in relative peace in these days, serving the Lord and waking up to the truth. Sure, we've had to suffer minor inconveniences. We've had to lose, sacrifice certain things, but we haven't strived to serve the Lord against death and against the shedding of our blood, which is what we've covered many times in these classes, concerning the hardships that come with standing with the Most High. But we're going to get into it, why I'm bringing those things up pertaining to the Feast of Hachaanakah and what I wanted to go into tonight. But let me read Jeremiah chapter 28, verse 8. And this is speaking about the nature of men of God. It says, the prophets that have been before me and before thee of old, meaning the prophets that came before me, the prophets that were before you, that came out before you, before I did. This is Jeremiah speaking. He's saying the prophets that were before me, meaning the men whose footsteps I'm walking in, who were before you, who came out before the people of old back in the day, you understand, prophesied both against many countries and against great kingdoms. The prophets of old didn't prophesy of joining hand in hand. They didn't prophesy of unity. The prophets of old prophesied against many countries, against great kingdoms. That's why today when we prophesy, we speak against joining America. We speak against voting. We speak against, the acceptance of all the evil that this society is pushing. And people, they say we racist. They say we crazy. When we're walking in the footsteps of the prophets of old. We've prophesied the destruction of America. We've prophesied the harm that would come to the Black community because of depending on America, depending on our oppressor. And people have looked at us like we're crazy. People looked at us like, we out of pocket, when really we're just standing for the Lord. We're doing what men of God have always done. Reading on in Jeremiah 28 and 8. You understand? Prophesied both against many countries and against great kingdoms, of war and of evil and of pestilence. That's what they prophesied, man. They prophesied war, evil, and pestilence. And today, God, the Bible tells us many times that the Lord hates this place. The Lord sees the evil going on in this place, and he wants to destroy it from off the face of the earth. That's Amos 9 and 8. You understand? And in Revelations, the 8th chapter, the Lord tells us to flee from this place because of the destruction that's coming. You understand? A lot of people have a hard time accepting the truth about God. And that's okay, because people have always had a hard time accepting the truth about God. For those of us who have accepted it, the Lord has chosen us to accept it, knowing that the world would hate us for it, knowing that we would have to fight in order to stand in the light of the Most High in Christ. Everybody understands? And so on the first night of Hachaanakah, we read the book of First Maccabees, the first chapter, read about the history and the backdrop of this celebration and the things that took place in the land of Israel leading up, you understand, to the rebellion that had to be fought in order for us to reclaim the temple. Last night we read in First Maccabees, the second chapter, about the time as the Greeks began to enforce, that basically the colonization of Israel, they started to enforce laws against us practicing our culture and enforce laws against us proclaiming to be Israelites and keeping the laws of God. And they started to force us to do evil against the Most High and sacrificing on altars to their gods and eating animals that the Lord said was unlawful. And we read last night about a man named Mattathias, Mattathias Maccabeus and his sons. And we read about how when they came to the city of Modin to cause men to sin against the Lord, Mattathias was one of the men that stood up and said, we will not go against our God. We will not go against our laws. You understand? And we'll die before we forsake our religion or we forsake our way of life. And at that time, when Mattathias took that stand, there came a sellout. There came a man that wanted to give and that wanted to be joined to the heathens, that wanted to be joined to the oppressor. You understand? And the brother Mattathias was full of the spirit of the Lord, and he rose up and he killed that man. He killed the Greeks who came to force us to sacrifice, killed the Greeks that came to force us to turn against our God, and that began the Maccabean Revolution. And we read about how them brothers was on the run up until the time that Mattathias passed away. And at the end of First Maccabees, the second chapter, Mattathias gave instructions to his sons on how they were to proceed forward in leading the people and guiding the people. You understand? So tonight, what we're going to do is we're going to read the book of First Maccabees. We're going to read the third chapter. Now, the third chapter of First Maccabees is going to get us into what took place after the death of Mattathias, and it's going to get us into some of the battles that took place and some of the valiant heroism that the brothers who stood against the Greeks at that time showed. And what I want you all to understand as we read First Maccabees, the third chapter, is that these brothers were inspired by the stories of men who came before them. You understand? And as we go through the book of First Maccabees, the third chapter, I'm going to stop and I'm going to go to different scriptures that these brothers drew inspiration from, where they drew strength from, where they knew that if they stood against this great evil, that the Lord would be with them. And it's important that we understand the lesson of these brothers' lives, but also understand where it is that they drew their inspiration from, so that when the Lord calls for us to stand in our day, in our generation, we'll have the strength and the fortitude to do so. All right, so I want everybody to go to First Maccabees chapter 3. We're going to start at verse 1. Also, if anybody has any questions, all you got to do is type them in online, all right? If you got any questions, type them in and we'll address them, all right? Again, First Maccabees chapter 3, verse 1 in the Apocrypha. Let's get it. First Maccabees 3 and 1 says, Then his son Judas, called Maccabeus, rose up in his stead, and all his brethren helped him, and so did all they that held with his father. And they fought with cheerfulness the battle of Israel. So he got his people great honor, and put on a breastplate as a giant, and girt his warlike harness about him, and he made battles, protecting the host with his sword. In his acts he was like a lion, and like a lion's whelp roaring for his prey. For he pursued the wicked and sought them out, and burned up those that vexed the people. So we're reading about the triumph of Judas Maccabees in the war. And as you understanding reading the Bible, when you first come into the truth and you learn that the Bible was written by black men, that the Hebrews were black people, you understand, and that the heroic feats of combat that you hear about, like with Daniel and with Samson and I'm not Daniel. Goddamn, who was it? Yeah, Daniel and Goliath, David and Goliath. Goddamn, David and Goliath. You hear about Samson killing 1,000 Philistines with a donkey jawbone. I can remember being young and thinking about white people, and I'm like, what white man is killing a giant? Or what white man is killing 1,000 with a donkey jawbone? But when you understand that the people we're reading about are black people, the same bloodline that blacks in America, you understand, Latinos, Native Indians, the brothers and sisters in the Caribbean come from, then you can understand, you can get a picture in your mind of what these men must have been like. And when I think about Mattathias, and when I think about Judas, and I think about the valiant, war, his valiancy in war and his heroism, killing with the sword, I think about men like LeBron James. I think about, Adrian Peterson, Kevin Garnett, Shaquille O'Neal, Jim Brown. I think about the great athletes of the day. I think about a Mike Tyson, you understand, or a Deontay Wilder. When you read the Bible and you understand that we're reading about black people's history, it can give you a visual in your mind of what these men must have looked like on a battlefield. Think about the NFL. You know what I'm saying? Think about the NBA. Imagine if these men, if we weren't in a captivity where the way out of suffering and poverty was to become an entertainer for your slave master. Imagine we back in the days and times where in order to have a village or have a country that's thriving and that's progressing, you have strong men who are trained in warfare, trained in battle to protect their families, to protect their people. You understand? Imagine the what we are producing from the ghettos of America today, and we're in captivity. You understand? LeBron James and these athletes and these cats are raised on, government welfare, raised on Kool-Aid and, syrup sandwiches and, you know, whatever the hell you buy from this grocery store with all of the GMOs and the pesticides and all the things that kill our people, we're still producing the biggest, strongest, most athletic, physically dominant people on the planet. Well, imagine us when we were in our homeland, when we were obeying God and keeping his laws. You understand? When you read about what the feats of the Maccabees, think about your NFL players, your NBA players. Imagine if in today's society, we were wiped out, you know, technology was wiped out and we were back to the days of hand-to-hand combat, of fighting with swords. Who would be the most dominant people on the earth? Who would be the most physically superior people on the earth? And it's us. And so reading about this just now, I thought of a LeBron James. I thought of a Mike Tyson. You know, I thought of a, you know, you cats may not know about sports, but I think of a cat like Larry Allen, who was the offensive guard for the Cowboys. He bench pressed like 525 pounds. Or you think he bench pressed like 1,000 pounds. Something stupid, some unimaginable bench press that this cat did playing football. And I think about them instead of playing a game, you know, instead of playing a competition sport, I think of them fighting on a battlefield for their people. You understand? This is what we're reading about when we read about men like Judas Maccabees and his soldiers fighting against the Greeks. We're not reading about some poor, skinny, scrawny nation of people. We're reading about the people who were blessed by God to be the most physically dominant, dominating, and physically superior on the earth. You understand? So I'm gonna keep on reading. This is 1 Maccabees chapter 3, verse 5. It says, "For he pursued the wicked and sought them out and burnt up those that vexed his people. Wherefore the wicked shrunk for fear of him, and all the workers of iniquity were troubled because salvation prospered in his hands. He grieved also many kings and made Jacob glad with his acts, and his memorial is blessed forever. Moreover, he went through the cities of Judah, destroying the ungodly out of them, and turning away wrath from Israel, so that he was renowned unto the utmost part of the earth, and he received unto him such as were ready to perish. Then Apollonius gathered the Gentiles together and a great host out of Samaria to fight against Israel. Which thing when Judas perceived, he went forth to meet him. And so he smote him and slew him. Many also fell down slain, but the rest fled." Like, this is a brother who took the army, man, and they went out. They was not afraid of no battle. They was not scared of any enemy. They was ready to get it on. He went out, and they got it on, and they was victorious. Verse 13, "Now when Saron, a prince of the army of Syria, heard say that Judas had gathered unto him a multitude and company of the faithful to go out with him to war, he said, I will get me a name and honor in the kingdom, for I will go fight with Judas and them that are with him, who despise the king's commandment. So he made him ready to go up, and there went with him a mighty host of the ungodly to help him, and to be avenged of the children of Israel. And when he came near to going up of Beth Horon, Judas went forth to meet him with a small company." So there's a large army that's coming to fight these brothers. And Judas went out with a small company. You understand? He ain't need a lot of men to go to battle with them against these cats. Verse 17, "Who, when they saw the host coming to meet them, said unto Judas, How shall we be able, being so few, to fight against so great a multitude and so strong, seeing we are ready to faint with fasting all this day?" So the men with Judas, they got afraid of the numbers of this army. They saw how many of them it was coming against them, such a small number, and they were afraid. They were nervous. They said to Judas, "Man, how are we gonna fight these cats, man? You see how many of them it is." Reading on, verse 18. "Unto whom Judas answered, It is no hard matter for many to be shut up in the hands of a few, and with the God of heaven it is all one to deliver with a great multitude or a small company. For the victory of battle standeth not in the multitude of an host, but strength cometh from heaven." Now, where did Judas learn this? Where did Judas get this understanding to have that courage to be able to take such a few men and stand in the face of many? Let me get you a scripture right quick. Oh. Give me 2 Chronicles chapter 14 and 11. And this is a prayer that we pray even today in the ISUPK. This is one of those prayers where men who are going out to do a great thing in the name of the Lord draw on, the Lord's protection, draw on the Lord's, spirit of strength, to draw on the Lord's, spirit of being heroic. And Judas, as he calmed his men down and he reminded his men that the Lord is the one that's in this battle, and that the strength that we need in order to go and fight and win is going to come from the Lord. Judas was a man that understood the prayers of men that had come before him, and it's important that we remember those prayers today. This is 2 Chronicles chapter 14, verse 11. You understand? It says, and Asa cried unto the Lord his God and said, Yahweh, it is nothing with thee to help, whether with many or with them that have no power. Help us, O Yahweh, our power, for we rest on thee, and in thy name we go against this multitude. O Yahweh, thou art our power. Let not man prevail against thee. There was a time when this brother Asa had to go out to battle against many that came against him and the men that he was with. And Asa cried and prayed to the Lord that the Most High would be with them, because the Most High is with many, and he's also with them that have no power. And Asa cried to the Most High for help, that the Most High would be with them as they went out against the multitude, and that the Most High would not allow man to prevail against him. And Asa and his brothers had the victory that day. This is 2 Chronicles 14 and 12. It says, so the Most High smote the Ethiopians before Asa and before Judah, and the Ethiopians fled. You understand? Asa prayed this prayer, and the Lord gave them victory over their enemies. Well, Judas, understanding these prayers, understanding what men like Asa had gone through, he stood with the Most High to be with him and his men as they went out against the multitude in their lifetime. And when our time comes, like I said, every week we go to camp. This is in the camp prayers in the UPK. We pray that prayer of Asa. You understand? And there comes a time when we go out to go to battle against the multitude. We won't fret because of the numbers. We won't be afraid because of how few of us it is compared to them, because we will remember the prayers of Asa. We'll remember the prayer of Judas Maccabees. We'll remember the strength and the integrity that they had in going out to battle. Back to 1 Maccabees, the 3rd chapter. We're going to go now into the 20th verse. Bear with me. First Maccabees chapter 3, verse 20. This is Judas Maccabees speaking. He says, they come against us in much pride and iniquity, to destroy us and our wives and children, and to spoil us. But we fight for our lives and our laws. Wherefore the Lord himself will overthrow them before our face. And as for you, be ye not afraid of them. Now, as soon as he had left off speaking, he leapt suddenly upon them. And so Saron and his host was overthrown before him. And they pursued them from the going down of Beth Horon unto the plain, where were slain about 800 men of them. And the residue fled into the land of the Philistines. Then began the fear of Judas and his brethren, and an exceeding great dread to fall upon the nations round about them, insomuch as his fame came unto the king, and all nations talked of the battles of Judas. Now when King Antiochus heard these things, he was full of indignation. Wherefore he sent and gathered together all the forces of his realm, even a very strong army. He opened also his treasure and gave his soldiers pay for a year, commanding them to be ready whensoever he should need them. Nevertheless, when he saw that the money of his treasures failed, and that the tributes in the country were small, because of the dissension of the and plague which had been brought upon the land, and taking away the laws which had been of the old time, he feared that he should not be able to bear the charges any longer, nor to have such gifts to give so liberally as he did before. For he had abounded above the kings that were before him. Wherefore, being greatly perplexed in his mind, he determined to go into Persia, there to take the tributes of the countries and to gather much money. So he left Lysias, a nobleman and one of the blood royal, to oversee the affairs of the king from the river Euphrates unto the borders of Egypt. So Antiochus, in the face of this rebellion from Judas, didn't have enough money to be able to continue to constantly go to war. And because he had been so cruel and had such overtaxed all the people in the lands where he ruled, he didn't have any more money in order to be able to fund the war against Judah. So he said, you know what, I got to depart. He left this man Lysias in charge as he departed and went into Persia to collect money. Went into Persia to gain, resources in order to be able to fight this war, to keep control over Jerusalem. 1 Maccabees chapter 3, verse 33. And to bring up his son Antiochus until he came again. Moreover, he delivered unto him the half of his forces and the elephants, and gave him charge of all things that he would have done, as also concerning them that dwelt in Judah and Jerusalem. To wit, that he should send an army against them, to destroy them and root out the strength of Israel and the remnant of Jerusalem, and to take away their memorial from that place. And that he should place strangers in all their quarters and divide their land by lot. So the king took the half of the forces that remained and departed from Antioch, his royal city, the 147th year, and having passed the river Euphrates, he went through the high countries. Then Lysias chose Ptolemy, the son of Dorymenes, Nicanor, and Gorgias, mighty men of the king's friends, and with them he sent 40,000 footmen and 7,000 horsemen to go into the land of Judah and to destroy it as the king commanded. So they went forth with all their power and came and pitched by Emmaus in the plain country. And the merchants of the country, hearing the fame of them, took silver and gold very much with servants, and came into the camp to buy the children of Israel for slaves. A power also of Syria and of the land of the Philistines joined themselves unto them. So all the army that came from Antioch was 47,000 men, 40,000 footmen, 7,000 horsemen. And when they came and camped at Emmaus, all the countries round about knew, man, this force is about to wipe Israel out. So all of the slavers and all of the men that traded in enslaved women and men and children, they all came and joined. All the markets of thieves who wanted to steal gold and steal silver so that they could go sell it in the markets, they camped with the army. The Philistines also sent forces, and the forces of Syria came. So this is a large army that's camped out at Emmaus to come against the children of Israel living in the land of Jerusalem and Judah. 1 Maccabees 3 and 42. Now when Judas and his brethren saw that miseries were multiplied, and that the forces did encamp themselves in their borders, for they knew how the king had given commandment to destroy the people and utterly abolish them, they said to one another, let us restore the decayed fortune of our people, and let us fight for our people in the sanctuary. Then was the congregation gathered together that they might be ready for battle, and that they might pray and ask mercy and compassion. Now Jerusalem lay void as a wilderness. There was none of her children that went in or out. The sanctuary also was trodden down, and aliens kept the stronghold. The heathen had their habitation in that place, and joy was taken from Jacob, and the pipe with the harp ceased. Wherefore the Israelites assembled themselves together and came to Mizpah over against Jerusalem. For in Mizpah was the place where they prayed aforetime in Israel. Then they fasted that day and put on sackcloth and cast ashes upon their heads and rent their clothes and laid open the book of the law wherein the heathen had sought to paint the likeness of their images. They brought also the priest's garments and the first fruits and the tithes, and the Nazarites they stirred up had accomplished their days. Then carried they with a loud voice, cried they with a loud voice toward heaven, saying, what shall we do with these? And whither shall we carry them away? For thy sanctuary is trodden down and profaned, and thy priests are in heaviness and brought low. And lo, the heathen are assembled together against us to destroy us. What things they imagine against us, thou knowest. How shall we be able to stand against them, except thou, O God, be our help? Then sounded they with trumpets and cried with a loud voice. And after this, Judas ordained captains over the people, even captains over thousands and over hundreds and over 50s and over 10s. Again, we see that rank structure that's always existed in our nation. That military, men are in charge. Men are the ones responsible for protection and leadership. We see it being reinstated with Judas in the time when we were fighting against our oppressors. But as for such as were building houses or had betrothed wives or were planting vineyards or were fearful, those he commanded that they should return every man to his own house according to the law. So the camp removed and pitched upon the south side of Emmaus. And Judas said, arm yourselves and be valiant men, and see that ye be in readiness against the morning, that ye may fight with these nations that are assembled together against us to destroy us and our sanctuary. For it is better for us to die in battle than to behold the calamities of our people and our sanctuary. Nevertheless, as the will of the Most High is in heaven, so let him do. First Maccabees chapter 4, verse 1. Then took Gorgias 5,000 footmen and 1,000 of the best horsemen, and removed out of the camp by night, to the end he might rush upon the camp of the Jews and smite them suddenly. And the men of the fortress were his guides. Now when Judas heard thereof, he himself removed, and the valiant men with him, that he might smite the king's army which was at Emmaus, while as yet the forces were dispersed from the camp. In the mean season came Gorgias by night into the camp of Judas, and when he found no man there, he sought them in the mountains, for said he, these fellows flee from us. So here's what's taking place. This cat Gorgias gets 1,000 of the horsemen, 5,000 soldiers, and say, we're going to sneak up on these Israelites in their camp, and we're going to destroy them before they even know what hit them. We're going to strike, and they're not even going to know what took place. You got to remember, this is taking place in the land of Israel. So Judas understands the land, has battled with these cats before, knows their tactics. Judas said, listen, y'all, we're going to remove from this camp in the mid-season. Meaning a time when they know we pitched here. But if we remove out, there's a way that we can get out of here, and they won't know that we moved at all. So as Gorgias and his men come up on the camp thinking that they're going to catch us off guard and by surprise, Judas had already moved everybody out of that spot, and they were in another spot now. As Gorgias and his men come up, they think, well, they ain't here. They must have retreated. They must have went into the mountains. So him and his forces go to attack us in the mountains. Verse 6, but as soon as it was day, Judas showed himself in the plain with 3,000 men, who nevertheless had neither armor nor swords to their minds. And they saw the camp of the heathen, that it was strong and well harnessed and compassed round about with horsemen, and these were expert at war. Then Judas to the men that were with him, fear ye not their multitude, neither be ye afraid. Salakia. Neither be ye afraid of their assault. Remember how our fathers were delivered in the Red Sea, when Pharaoh pursued them with an army. Now, therefore, let us cry unto heaven, if peradventure the Lord will have mercy upon us, and remember the covenant of our fathers, and destroy this host before our face today. That so all the heathen may know that there is one who delivereth and saveth Israel. Then the strangers lifted up their eyes and saw them coming over against them. Wherefore they went out of the camp to battle, but they that were with Judah sounded their trumpets. So they joined battle, and the heathen, being discomfited, fled into the plain. Howbeit all the hindmost of them were slain with the sword, and they pursued them unto Gezerah, and unto the plains of Idumea, and Azotus, and Yamnia, so that there were slain of them upon 3,000 men. You understand? This done, Judas returned again with his host from pursuing them. So Judas and his men attacked the camp that was at Emmaus. That camp was short 6,000 men. And Judas and his men did not come at them in battle array. They damn near snuck up on them, crept up on them. You understand? And they crept up on them. They caught them off guard, took their weapons, killed the men with their weapons, killed 3,000 of them as the rest of the host fled into the plains. Right? So they killed 3,000. Judas and his men held their ground. Verse 17, and said to the people, be not greedy of the spoil, inasmuch as there is a battle before us, and Gorgeous and his hosts are here by us in the mountain. But stand ye now against our enemies and overcome them. And after this, ye may boldly take the spoil. So Judas, after the main camp had retreated, Judas told his men, calm down. Don't get overzealous. We not chasing them where they at. There's plenty more battle to go. But right now, let's go get them 6,000 that's up in the mountains looking for us. Let us kill them. And after we kill them, we can take all the spoils that are here for us to be taken. Right? As Judas, this is 1 Maccabees 4 now and 19. As Judas was yet speaking these words, there appeared a part of them looking out of the mountain, who, when they perceived that the Jews had put their host to flight and were burning the tents, for the smoke that was seen declared what was done. When therefore they perceived these things, they were sore afraid, and seeing also the host of Judas in the plain ready to fight, they fled every one into the land of strangers. Then Judas returned to spoil the tents, where they got much gold and silver and blue silk and purple of the sea, and great riches. After this they went home and sung a song of thanksgiving and praised the Lord in heaven, because it is good, because his mercy endureth forever. Thus Israel had a great deliverance that day. Now all the strangers that had escaped came and told Lysias what had happened, who, when he heard thereof, was confounded and discouraged, because neither such things as he would were done unto Israel, nor such thing as the king commanded him were come to pass. The next year, therefore, following, Lysias gathered together 70,000 choice men of foot and 5,000 horsemen, that he might subdue them. So it took about a year after this defeat, after this crushing defeat in Emmaus, Lysias had to reconvene his army, regather his troops. This time they came out with 60,000. 3 score is 20 times 20 is a score. 3 score is 20 times 3, which is 60. 60,000 and 5,000 horsemen. So they came out this time with 60,000 men, you understand, and 5,000 horsemen. Verse 29, so they came into Idumea and pitched their tents at Bethsura, and Judas met them with 10,000 men. So it's 10,000 against 60,000 and 5,000 horsemen. You have to understand that these brothers are extremely brave and extremely valiant and, full of the spirit of the Lord in the way that, it's difficult to imagine. But this is 10,000 men coming out against 65,000, and they ready to get it on. You understand? Verse 30, and when he saw that mighty army, he prayed and said, Blessed art thou, O Savior of Israel, who did quell the violence of the mighty men by the hand of thy servant David, and gave the host of strangers into the hands of Jonathan, the son of Saul, and his armor bearer. Shut up this army in the hand of thy people Israel, and let them be confounded in the power and horsemen. Understand that this was a brother who understood the past. This was a brother who understood that in times of war before, we had leaned on the Most High. And so Judas didn't lean on his own strength. He didn't lean on himself. He leaned on the Lord, put his trust and his faith in the Lord. And that is a requirement of men of God who go to battle in the name of the Most High Christ and their nation. You got to remember to put your trust and your faith in the Most High. Verse 32, make them to be of no courage, and cause the boldness of their strength to fall away, and let them quake at their destruction. Cast them down with the sword of them that love thee, and let all those that know thy name praise thee with thanksgiving. So they joined battle, and there were slain of the host of Lysias about 5,000 men. Even before them were they slain. Now when Lysias saw his army put to flight, and the manliness of Judah's soldiers, and how they were ready either to live or die valiantly, he went into Antiochia and gathered together a company of strangers, and having made his army greater than it was, he purposed to come again unto Judea. Then said Judas and his brethren, behold, our enemies are discomfited. Let us go up to cleanse and dedicate the sanctuary. Upon this, all the hosts assembled themselves together and went up into Mount Zion. And when they saw the sanctuary desolate, and the altar profaned, and the courts and the gates burned up, and shrubs growing in the courts as in a forest or in one of the mountains, yea, and the priest's chambers pulled down, they rent their clothes and made great lamentation, and cast ashes upon their heads, and fell down flat to the ground upon their faces, and blew an alarm with the trumpets, and cried toward heaven. Then Judas appointed certain men to fight against those that were in the fortress, until he had cleansed the sanctuary. So he chose priests of blameless conversation, such as had pleasure in the law, who cleansed the sanctuary and bare out the defiled stones into an unclean place. And when as they consulted what to do with the altar of burnt offerings, which was profane, they thought it best to pull it down, lest it should be a reproach to them, because the heathen had defiled it. Wherefore they pulled it down, and laid up the stones in the mountain of the temple in a convenient place, until there should come a prophet to show what should be done with them. Then they took whole stones according to the law, and built a new altar according to the former, and made up the sanctuary and the things that were within the temple and the hallow of the courts. They made also new holy vessels, and into the temple they brought the candlestick, and the altar of burnt offerings and of incense, and the table. And upon the altar they burned incense, and the lamps that were upon the candlestick they lighted, that they might give light in the temple. Furthermore, they set the loaves upon the table, and spread out the veils, and finished all the works that they had begun to make. Now on the 25th day of the 9th month, which is called the month Casliu, in the 148th year, they rose up betimes in the morning, and offered sacrifice according to the law upon the new altar of burnt offerings, which they had made. Look at what time and what day the heathen had profaned it, even that it was dedicated with songs and citherns and harps and cymbals. Then all the people fell upon their faces, praising the God of heaven, who had given them good success. So they kept the dedication of the altar 8 days, and offered burnt offerings with gladness, and sacrificed the sacrifice of deliverance and praise. They decked also the forefront of the temple with crowns of gold and with shields, and the gates of the chambers they renewed, and hanged doors upon them. Thus was there very great gladness among the people, for that the reproach of the heathen was put away. Moreover, Judas and his brethren with the whole congregation of Israel ordained that the days of the dedication of the altar should be kept in their season from year to year by the space of 8 days. From the 25th day of the month cast they you with mirth and gladness. At that time also they builded up the Mount Sion with high walls and strong towers round about, lest the Gentiles should come and tread it down as they had done before. And they set there a garrison to keep it, and fortified Beth Surah to preserve it, and the people might have a defense against Idumea. It's the end of First Maccabees, the 4th chapter. You understand? Understand that as we celebrate this feast of Hachaanakah, as we celebrate the rededication of our temple all those thousands of years ago, that we never lose sight that with the Most High on our side, nothing is impossible. That if we stand with the Most High, there is no force that cannot be overcome. There is no evil that cannot be triumphed against. But we must stand with the Most High. You understand? Like I said before, the brothers and the sisters we read about in this Bible, they are brothers and sisters who in their time and in their generation were called, you understand, to take a stand against the society of their time. Take a stand against the evil of the generation that they lived in. And they took that stand, putting their trust and their faith in the Most High. And because of it, we have their stories to remember today. Just know that in this time and in this generation, in our lifetimes, the Lord is going to call on us to show the same courage, to show the same strength, to show the same heroism. And it's going to take for us putting our trust and our faith in the Most High in order to be able to endure and to make it through that trial that is sure to come. In those days, remember Judas Maccabeus. In those days, remember Mattathias. Remember David. Remember Moses. Remember Solomon. You understand? Remember Daniel. Remember Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Remember these brothers who we read about in this Bible who stood for the Lord in their time. And because of it, they were rewarded. We stand for the Lord in our time, we will be rewarded. With that, I'll see y'all tomorrow, you understand, for the 4th night of the Feast of Hachaanakah. For all the brothers and sisters out there, I pray y'all celebrating. Have you some food, man. Have you some drink. Play some music. Praise the Most High and be thankful that the Lord has allowed us, you understand, to have preserved these records so that we can never forget the greatness that lies within us if we put our trust and our faith and our obedience in the Most High. With that, shalom, Israel. We out.